Welcome back to the Fantasy Endgame. I'm Pierre, and here to break down some of the top waiver wire options even after waivers have run, because it's never too early to get ahead of the game and stash some of those players that could help you in future weeks. So let's start at running back. I think the first name I have to mention is a guy that you know well, and that is J.K. Dobbins. You probably heard his practice window has opened. Not going to see Dobbins in Week 13. Possibly we'll see him next week or the week after. And so, of course, the truthers will come out. A lot of people are going to just say, here we go, J.K. Dobbins just in time for the fantasy playoffs to help you win your league. All right, so let's just get this out of the way with, if you've been watching the endgame for a while. I'm not running out to pick up Dobbins, and Chris isn't. So why am I talking about him? He's going to have some value, maybe. I mean, look, right now it's an ugly situation. Baltimore's offense is just kind of struggling to really put it all together. Gus Edwards is back, looked pretty good. I mentioned him as a waiver wire pickup for this week. I really like him this week. But then Kenyon Drake is kind of still lurking there. And then once J.K. Dobbins comes back, what is going to happen? Are they just going to give it to Dobbins and say, it's your job, run with it? Are we going to see a 2-man committee, a 3-man committee? It's hard to say. So, look, I do recognize that Dobbins has some upside because he will be used near the goal line. He's probably going to be the guy who gets that red zone work. Even though Gus Edwards is really good at that, they still prefer Dobbins. Dobbins is the most talented of those running backs. And Dobbins, well, he did look good for that one game until then he started not looking good and got hurt again. So I just want you to be aware. I will not rush out to pick him up. I will not advocate for him when he does get activated as a priority pickup. I'm telling you now, you could stash him because there is some upside there. But again, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and think that he's going to help you win your league. Now, the running back situation that everybody's looking at now is in San Francisco. There's always a different 49ers running back who kind of comes out of nowhere to have value. And you think, well, that's not the case anymore. They got CMC. What is there to worry about? Well, unfortunately, now CMC having some issues with the knee, experiencing some tenderness. They're hoping he'll play in Week 13. That is exactly what you didn't want to hear. He'd been good all year long, and now all of a sudden maybe having some issues. But really, even besides that, even McCaffrey is good to go. No questions asked rest of the season. We have to look at who is the backup here because Elijah Mitchell now out for the rest of the regular season. And so somebody else is going to get in the mix at least for some touches, and then, of course, becomes a very high-end handcuff if CMC should miss some time. All right, so who is up next? Well, they don't have Jeff Wilson anymore because they traded him. Mitchell is out. The next man seems to be Jordan Mason, undrafted free agent rookie, who is, well, he's just kind of been there all season but hasn't really done much. And then this last week when Mitchell was out, we did see Mason get a few carries. He was the guy who was active, not Tyrion Davis-Price, who was drafted in the 3rd round, oddly enough. So Mason did get 5 carries, 25 yards. He was at least active. You think he's probably next in line. Now, I know some people are saying, well, he's active because he can play special teams. Davis-Price that's not his role. And so maybe this is where TDP comes in and he gets the carries. But I'm not seeing it because, look, even when he was healthy, because, he missed the first few weeks he was hurt, Davis-Price just isn't getting on the field, period. Mason has kind of been ahead of him on the depth chart all season long. Mason did get some run, not just special teams snaps. He did get some actual rushing attempts last week. I've got to think Mason is next. We know that he talked about him more highly in training camp. Kyle Shanahan did. So I think Mason looks like the handcuff to own. He's the guy that I'm targeting on waivers. Look, some people are just picking up even before the weekend. Some people are already making waiver claims, and I don't blame you. But he's probably available in most leagues, and I would probably go after him first, especially if you are a McCaffrey owner. You definitely want that handcuff. But what if it's not Jordan Mason? So here's the next name I'm going to talk about. Maybe you heard some rumblings that even besides Davis-Price, it could be someone like Tevin Coleman who steps into the fray. Now, we know Tevin Coleman well. He's a veteran. He's been with San Francisco before. And you may even remember back in Week 5, came out of nowhere, just like he could do again, and scored 2 touchdowns on only 11 touches, 8 carries and 3 catches. Again, out of nowhere, and then he kind of disappeared again. well, he might have to reappear. And look, this is a San Francisco team looking to make the playoffs. Kyle Shanahan is a guy who prefers his vets to his young players. It would not surprise me if they need somebody to carry some of the weight from CMC, or God forbid, he goes out and misses some time, then we could see Tevin Coleman as either a 1A or a 1B here. There is some value, not the most exciting name, but look, he is a decent player, and if he's getting touches, and especially if he's the pass catching back in that offense, yes, there's fantasy value there. So definitely a name worth tucking away. Let's talk about another handcuff, but this time the very rare wide receiver handcuff. Don't advocate for that a lot, but hear me out here. So you got an elite wide receiver, and what if something happens? You want his replacement in a high-powered offense. Well, we've seen that doesn't always, pan out the way we want to with a guy like, let's say, Tyler Boyd, who even is a pretty good receiver tied to a good quarterback. With Jamar Chase out, he hadn't done much. All right. But sometimes there's a team whose depth is just so thin, and they just get the ball out to those wideouts specifically so much, you should take note. I'm talking about the Miami Dolphins. Look, we know it's Ty Hill and Jalen Waddle, just both must-starts, no doubt, monsters in PPR leagues. Who's behind them in the pecking order? Now, you probably know that they also signed Cedric Wilson Jr. from the Cowboys to be in the mix there. He has not been in the mix at all. He's hardly done anything. It just hasn't really fit into this offense. He's basically restricted to special teams these days. You might be surprised to know that the number 3 receiver and the guy who would probably step up a lot in target share should Hill or Waddle go out is Trent Sherfield. That's right, Trent Sherfield, who has spent time with the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. Well, they added him late in the preseason, and he's been the number 3 guy. In fact, he is number 3, tied with Mike Gesicki, on the Miami Dolphins in receptions with 24. He only has one fewer target than Gesicki, out-targeting Cedric Wilson. And you know what? I bet you couldn't even name who else they even have at wide receiver besides those guys I've already mentioned. Look, I'm a lifelong Dolphins fan. I had to go look it up to see who would be number 5 or even 6, who's down there in the pecking order, to find out that it's River Craycraft. And then I had to go look up who River Craycraft was. But seriously, Trent Sherfield, he's a veteran. He's gotten some trust from Tua. We see he went to him, especially this past week, got more targets. So again, if you have a Hill or a Waddle and you're not crazy about your wide receiver depth, I don't hate going out and stashing Sherfield. That's kind of your insurance policy should something happen to one of those Dolphins receivers. Back to running back, let's go with another handcuff that is probably widely available because he was not on an NFL team for a few days. That's Eno Benjamin. You might know he landed in Houston, and he's going to be the backup to Dameon Pierce. So Chris and I have been talking about this, especially this week. If Dameon Pierce doesn't have a good game, and I mean a really good game against Cleveland in Week 13, you've got to be worried because that would make 3 straight duds, and this is a good spot based on how bad Cleveland's run defense has been. It's a home game. They're fired up for this game. If Pierce doesn't do anything, you've got to think he's just hit the rookie wall head on. All right, so if that's the case, I mean, I hate to say it, but when guys get, especially at running back, too many carries, physically worn down, not used to the grind, that's when injuries crop up. Okay, maybe we see them lighten the load for him. This team isn't going anywhere. Like, what are they even playing for at this point? So we might see his workload reduced. And so I might see Eno Benjamin get into action. Right now, he's the handcuff for Dameon Pierce. Rex Burkhead, I know he's there. Well, he's out for Week 13 with a concussion. Hasn't really been involved. You'd think Benjamin has a better shot to get some action. So again, Benjamin is the guy that you might want to take a hard look at. If you've been riding Pierce as your RB2 all year, I'm not saying to drop him immediately if he has a bad game in Week 13, but you might consider benching him, and you might consider the fact that we will see a little bit more of a timeshare in that backfield. And then finally, it's rare that I talk about stashing a quarterback. And look, outside of a super flex 2 quarterback league, probably not going to happen. But we have to talk about Jordan Love because Aaron Rodgers is playing this coming week. But then after that, will he even play again in Green Bay? He's talking about until they're eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, that's probably going to happen, this weekend, next weekend? I don't know the math on that yet. I'm guessing it's not going to be too long before the Packers are out of it. And it doesn't seem like his heart is really in it anyways. I don't know if he's going to play football at all next year anyways. So he even made a comment, which is very surprising for a guy like Rodgers, that he has no problem giving way to Jordan Love for the rest of the season. It seems like he's just ready. He's ready to pass the torch, or at least leave the torch there burning on the ground for someone else to pick up. All right, so Jordan Love, look, we don't know what we're getting, but what we saw in his limited time last week, it wasn't too bad. I mean, obviously Christian Watson there, an emerging stud. Just get the ball in his hands and watch him go. Lazard is still there. Romeo Doubs is actually on his way back, which, by the way, wouldn't be a bad stash either. But let's see what happens at quarterback here first. So there are weapons. He's got good running backs there. Aaron Jones in the backfield. Packers not too bad a schedule. And if Jordan Love really has grown and taken a step forward, the accuracy is there, the decision making is better, and most importantly, he has the confidence knowing he is the starter and the future of this franchise. That could mean a lot, right? He knows he's not just filling in for a quarter or a half. So worth monitoring Jordan Love. Not a guy that, even if he is a starter, I'm saying you're going to start him in your fantasy league for the fantasy playoffs in a one quarterback league. No. But worth him as a backup quarterback? Sure. In a super flex league? Definitely. So somebody to consider. Let's see what happens. I have a feeling we're going to see several Jordan Love starts before the season is over. All right, that's who I'm looking at heading into week 13. Guys that you should be considering as stashes. It's more important than ever that you have your bench right before those playoffs come. We got you covered, by the way. Start, sit advice, and everything else you need here for week 13. Check out our playlist, and we will help you win and get to those playoffs.